Hey everybody, this is Britton here. If you guys are new to the group, welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining this movement. And if you guys don't know because you're new to the group, I'm just going to introduce myself one more time. I think I've done it a million. You guys probably know who I am by now. But my name is Britton LaTulip. I am the president of Blue Manners Online Academy. What we're talking about tonight is education is not a trivial pursuit. That is actually one of the chapters in this book is on that. So much of the time now, we think it's about how much you know. And there kind of became these popular game shows like Wheel of Fortune or actually a game, Trivial Pursuit. And it was kind of this idea that a person is smart based on how many facts and information they can get into their head. And hey, Tatiana, how are you? And so we have this idea like you play Trivial Pursuit. Oh, this guy's really smart. He knew all these interesting facts and all that stuff. But trivial actually means useless or pointless, not important. So when you win Trivial Pursuit, you might just be losing the education game. It means your head is full of tons of useless information. That's not what we're doing when we're educating or raising children for greatness. We cannot fill their head full of useless information. If you can name all of the World Series champions for the last 100 years, I'm not impressed. That's just totally useless. Unless you are a baseball coach or that is your profession, it's just a fun fact. It can't do anything for you. So often in homeschooling, our educational focus, and public school for sure, is a trivial pursuit. You'll have kids sitting in front of the TV all day and they're watching these nature discovery shows and they're learning about these weird ants in this other country and you know the nature shows, stuff like that. And my kids could tell you some crazy facts about whales and stuff. They watch some of those shows for fun. But that is not necessarily education unless they want to be a scientist or a zoologist or something like that. That is fun facts. That is trivial information. They can't actually use that in any useful way. So when we talk about a great education, we're talking about giving your kids the information and the ability to pursue their dreams. And we have 4 criteria or 4 subjects. These are the headers, the goals of life. We say faith, family, finances, and fitness. Those are the 4 goals of life. So if you want to know all the facts about whales or beluga whales or whatever, that's totally cool. That's fun. That's interesting. But that's not part of a great education. So you do that separately. If you're reading, I don't know, fantasy novels, again, not part of a great education. It might be if it's a classic and it's something like Lord of the Rings and it's got this deeper Christian theology tied to it, that's one thing. But if it's something like Goosebumps, that's for entertainment. It's fun, it's useful. Maybe it increases your vocabulary a little bit, your imagination, something like that. But that's not part of a great education. A great education is something that will impact our lives in a meaningful way. It has purpose and behind it, if that makes sense. We're not just filling our heads up. So what are the 4 subjects? It's our faith, family, finances, and fitness. Everything that we're teaching at Blue Manor Academy should fit into that somehow. So how does that work? Okay, math. Let's go faith. Oh, geez. That's a tricky one. You could talk about math in the sense of physics and how the world works and how it points to Creator because everything is fine-tuned. You could talk about important numbers in the Bible. I think that's kind of cool. I'm stretching, okay? Like the number 7 or something like that, or 12, or God seems to like 7, likes 12. You could talk about history, prophecy. What are probabilities of some of the prophecies coming true in the Old Testament? What's the probability that Jesus could fulfill all of those prophecies? So that's interesting. That's math tied to faith. That's a stretch maybe, but you can see how you can kind of tie that to faith. How about family, math and family? I'm going to get back to that one. Finances, that should be obvious. You could talk about wealth creation. You could talk about, and then when we talk about finances in math, okay, when we talk about finances, career is part of that. When I say finances, it's just to have 4 F's. I'm really talking about building wealth. And part of building wealth is going to be your career, the way that you get capital. And then we'll talk about investing that later. Hey, Sharon, how are you? Good to see you again. And so career is part of that. So we talk about career is part of wealth. So that's the 3rd F. So how do we fit math into the career? Well, that depends on your career. If you're going to be a doctor, there's going to be certain math that you need to know for portions, not portions, doses, there we go, doses of medicine, things like that. There's going to be math when it comes to, let's say you want to be an architect or an engineer, there's going to be tons of math if you want to be a scientist. So it really is going to depend on your career, but you'll have certain math that's tailored to that career. Fitness, so faith, family, finances, and fitness. Fitness is just an F for health. So there's tons we can do with that. We want to teach our kids math that matters, that they're going to use. So when we teach math, we might teach it in the garden. You could talk about how big a plant grows, how you need to have this different space, or you could talk about how much does our family eat based, every kid has this amount, we need this amount, so we need to grow this amount of food to get through the year. So there can be tons of math revolved around that. Eating is part of your health. It's really important. Cooking, there's tons of math that you can do in the kitchen. I think that's more important. That's a great way to start teaching kids math. It's useful math. You could, we go back to family with math. Building a house. Everybody's going to have a house someday. They're going to be, hopefully, you know something like putting up a fence or building a shop or something, or your own furniture. There are things you can do that are useful to the family, building up your family that you could use math for. Tons of geometry and you could say algebra and I don't know, calculus maybe, probably not calculus, but geometry, any sort of math that's tied to building would be great for the family. Okay, that math is a tougher one, okay, for those. But math is good just in general for everyday uses. I think we understand how it works. Okay, history. History is really important. History of your faith. People don't any history. They don't know any history when it comes to their faith. They kind of know some of the, like what Jesus talked about. They know a little bit about the apostles, and then there's a huge blank spot. Most people think that the church basically began with Martin Luther. Like it kind of, the church got away, and then Martin Luther restarted it. Well, the church has thousands of years of history. Most people are not aware of that. And I think it's really important to study the history of your faith. The Christians have a huge, rich history. We have tons of heroes. You have kids who know all the history of Batman or Spider-Man or Superman, what planet he comes from and what his family line is, all this stuff. That's totally useless. That's trivial. But the history of your faith, the not just the apostles, but the church fathers and the reformers like Luther, or the history of Protestantism is really interesting because it's not Catholicism, Orthodox, and Protestantism. There's like 5,000 denominations of Protestantism, but they branch out from a few. Most people, it's funny how many Protestants will trace their history back to Luther, and they love Luther. They don't realize that, like if you're a Calvinist, Luther had no love for you. He considered you like the spawn of Satan, and he persecuted more Calvinists than Catholics, I believe. Okay, so but they'll think that they can trace their history back to that. Actually, they have a different history. They might have been united in their protest of the Catholic Church, but there is a ton of different Protestant history. So all of that is important. Faith history, family history is important. Everybody studies history according to their nationality. That's a horrible way to study history. It should be studied, in my opinion, according to families. And let me give you an example. Most history, Roman history, begins with a family. Believe it or not, it was two brothers who founded Rome, and they kind of passed on this dynasty and this legacy. It's very interesting. The nation of Israel, it's not really a nation per se. It was a family who became so big they became a nation, but it started off as a family. It's very interesting. When there was a civil war, it wasn't this like half of the country went to war with each other. It was actually a family split and went to war with each other. Most history is family history. So basically what happened was Solomon was an illegitimate, he really was kind of an illegitimate son. He wasn't the oldest son for sure. And his half-brothers wanted the kingdom. It caused this huge divide. He ends up becoming the king, but after his descendants, that's it. The nation of Israel splits, but it's a family feud. When we think of the War of the Roses, we think of this huge civil war in England. It's a family feud. So it's really important when you study history, and don't just study the nation, study family. And then your own family history. That's so much more important. What is your family? Where do they come from? Where did they used to live? What's their health? We say, okay, family, we go finances. That's important to know your family's financial history. Were you once rich? Did you lose it all? Did your grandpa lose the family farm? Like, what's your history as it pertains to your wealth, your finances? Fitness. There's so many people that don't know their history of their health and their family. They go to the doctor, and that's what they always want to know. Do you have a history of cancer? Because a lot of times this is passed through the genes. Super important for kids to know their family's health history. So anyway, that's how we're taking these subjects and we're tying it into those life goals: faith, family, finances, fitness. So you do need to know how to read. How do you tie literature into your faith? Well, there's tons of great writing and nobody's read it. Tons of great writing by Christians throughout the centuries. There's classics. So, but there are some great things and no Christians have read them. It's just incredible how little literature our kids are reading. So they're reading the Redwall series. That's kind of cool. They're reading Goosebumps and all that stuff that's just trivial. But then they're not reading the great works of Christianity that will strengthen their faith. So when you take literature, it should support your faith and your values. That's one thing. Family. Goosebumps, whatever. It's not going to support your kids' your sense of family. But you read a book like Anne of Green Gables. I love that book. In the movie, they did a fantastic job. But that actually supports our view of faith. It supports our view of family, the importance of family and church. And so that's fostering the life goals: faith and family. Finances, there's tons of books that, I love the book Christmas Carol. That's great literature that really teaches something to kids about money. You have Ebenezer Scrooge, who's just this miser. He has actually a lot of money, but he lives in a cold, dark place because he's more in love with his money than life almost. So he lives miserable because, but then he learns this great lesson. So that's learning about your finances through literature. So we should tie it all back into that. And then health, I'm sure there are great books you could read about health. And I don't mean like becoming a bodybuilder and stuff, but I'm talking about like how the body works and understanding, if you have an ache or a pain or something like that, it's important you can kind of self-diagnose. It's important that you can feed yourself healthily through gardening and cooking and different things like that. So literature should tie into that, if that kind of makes sense. Okay. Geography, geography is really important. Understanding geography is in terms of your faith. Where did our faith start? Where did Abraham come from? Then he goes to Israel. And then from there, what happens to the church? What spreads out, it takes over Rome. And the Roman Empire is expanding, then it collapses. And learning geography that way, as it's tied to our faith, it's actually very interesting. Christopher Columbus discovers North America. And that was an incredible story for Christianity that's lost. The Great Commission Jesus gave before he left was to take the gospel to the four corners of the world, take it out to all of the nations, right? So when we discovered the Europeans, this is why it was so important. And people say, oh, it was already discovered. And Christopher Columbus, no, he didn't. He discovered it for Christendom. We didn't know that there was all these people, these two continents that had not heard the gospel. So when Queen Isabella discovered this new world, she was super excited. She's like, I'm the first one. I am the queen of this new world. I can take the gospel to this new world. And she sent missionaries, and it was a huge triumph for Christendom that we had found this land we didn't know about. And they obviously, it was discovered. There were Indians living here, but they didn't have the light of Christianity that had flourished in Europe. And so they were very barbaric. They were still practicing those wicked practices that had been passed down through the ages of the pagans. And I think they just recently found a grave in South America. I think it was maybe the Mayans, but they had young children in it. They had been mutilated to this sacrifice to this god. So we brought Christianity here. So geography, in that sense, it's really exciting when you learn it that way, tying it to your faith. Your family history. Where does your family come from? That's a great way to study it. My background is French, so it's really fun to say, even local history. Say, hey, we lived in this state, Idaho, and I lived over here in Virginia, and this is the city I lived in, and we can go on a Google Earth now and show them. And I lived in Kentucky and Mississippi for a while, and Oregon, and we can show our kids that and teach them geography. It's tied to our family, and then we can go to our nationality. I'm kind of French, not anymore. It's been a long time removed, but that's my history, so we can go back and trace it. Oh, and this is the country that your ancestors come from France, and that's how you tie geography into your faith and your family. Finances, the history of money might be an important one, kind of tying to geography. I might be stretching. You don't have to go over the top. It's not like you have to hit every single one of them, but I just want you to always be thinking of those overarching goals: faith, family, finances, and fitness when you're educating. It's like I always give the example of Christopher Columbus coming to the New World. And one of the questions when I was a kid was, I don't know, maybe it was like 5th or 6th grade, but it was, can you name the 3 ships that Christopher Columbus sailed to America on? That was a test question. So you think, like, that's important information. And then you get out of the world and you realize nobody cares when it comes to faith, finances, fitness, whatever. No employer asks you that question. it's not important. If you want to be a scholar, if it's fun to know the names, fine, but that's trivia. But obviously knowing Christopher Columbus, like what that meant to our faith, it was huge to our faith because it allowed us to fulfill the gospel. So science, history of science, creationism is huge. It's so sad. I feel. I know a lot of people feel you can be Christian, believe in evolution, and you can. I'm not saying you can't. I don't think when you get to heaven, you take this huge theology and scholarly test, and Jesus is just waiting there like, you got that one wrong. You misinterpreted that verse, you're out. So I think you can believe in evolution, be a Christian, but I don't think it does justice to history. It certainly doesn't do justice to our faith. So I think kids should study creationism. That's really cool. Science, the kid that will reinforce your faith. Actually, the study of physics through faith is phenomenal. You study physics, it should point to a God. So family, science with family, childbirth, that's relevant science kind of, in that realm, I guess. You could talk about the scientific method with family. There are things that we've tried in our family that worked and didn't work. We've tried out different things. That's a scientific method. We come up with a hypothesis, we test it. If it fails, we tweak it or we try something new. So that's science. Fitness. There's tons of science in fitness. In how your body produces food. I tell kids all the time, it's really important. I wish somebody would have told me this, because when I was a kid, they're like, the most important meal of the day is breakfast, and you get energy from food. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I want tons of energy because I'm going to take the SATs this morning. It's like this huge breakfast. I go in there and I'm just lethargic because all the blood is rushing to my stomach to digest this. It makes me lethargic and tired. And I'm already not a morning person, so it actually hurt me. When we go to chess tournaments, you see all the other kids, they break for lunch, they're just eating, gorging on food. I always make my kids, I say, nope, you can have a few bites in here, but we're not going to make you lethargic because that's science, and it affects your performance in chess. If you eat a big meal, you're going to start to feel sleepy, and you won't be able to focus. The science of fasting, is really fascinating. When you fast, I always used to, and I talk about this, in I think it's in the character book, the next one, but fasting, I always thought it was just like a way to punish yourself to kind of prove your dedication or something. Like, God, I'm going to fast for 3 days just to show that I love you. So it was always a sacrifice. I didn't realize fasting makes you stronger. And I don't mean spiritual because you've endured this hunger. I mean, literally, you used to read in the Old Testament that they fasted before battle. I think, oh man, they're going to be hungry. They have no energy for the battle. I thought it was all spiritual. I didn't really understand the science of fasting. That actually what happens is you store fat on your body. Fat is high energy food, and your body starts to eat that. So you're not actually starving yet just because you're hungry, and you can actually think better. So a lot of times throughout the day, if I eat too much, I can't write. I can't create like I need to. But I'll get hungry, and I've noticed I think better. That's through science. Now I haven't read a lot about it, but that's through the scientific method, something that I've kind of discovered on my own. So you can test things like that. Science, we talk health, tons of science in the garden. Kids should know about food. You eat food every day. It's so important, especially in this day and age where there's so much processed junk and we're finding out that all of it causes cancer. Your kids need to know about food. They need to know about gardening. There's tons of science. I learned tons of science. There's chemistry in the garden, and you can measure the pH levels of soil and watch how it affects different plants. It's actually tons of science. And if you have trouble gardening, it's because you don't understand the science. But you can also test things for kids. Okay, your plant's dying. Find out why. Get a control group. Start teaching them the scientific method. That will apply. The scientific method applies to everything in life. With finances, with family. If you stop listening to the experts, if you just turned everybody off, all these family experts, just forget about them, and you started testing things, you would be able to solve your own family problems. But the problem is we don't do science. We go to somebody's blog and they have a PhD from this leftist university and they're just filling you full of garbage, and then your marriage deteriorates further. So you can use science to solve your marriage issues, science to support your faith, science is obviously, there's a science to money. There's actually a science to money and into wealth creation. And then there is a science in food and physiology and all that stuff. Okay. All right. I hope that gives you some idea how we're taking educational subjects and we're making them useful so that our education is not a trivial pursuit. It has to impact our kids' lives. When you graduate high school, they used to always tell me, and I'm sure they're still harping on it, you got to go to college. You got to go to college or you're going to work at McDonald's. Really? You've been educated for 13 years if you include kindergarten. 13 years all day long. That's all you do is education. You come home, you got homework, stuff like that. 13 years, and they've qualified you to flip burgers at McDonald's, and they haven't, because anybody can flip burgers at McDonald's. If you had no education, you could go in there and flip burgers at McDonald's, and that's what they're telling you they qualified you for, and they're being honest. That education is absolutely worthless. It doesn't, for other reasons too. I mean, it's not like the information isn't worthless, but if you teach everybody the exact same thing, then you've raised the bar of education, but you've kept everybody the same, so you have to learn just more. It actually hurts you because everybody learns it, but that's something, a different topic. Okay, so I want to give your kids an education that will actually enhance their lives outside of academia. So much of what we do is about SATs and getting into college, and I've talked about in the goal, that's not my goal. I don't care about getting your kid into college, career, that is way too easy. The bar is way too easy. I know some kids who are just not smart people, okay? Not intellectually smart, academically smart. They all went to college. College is too low. If you're trying to get your kid into Harvard, you're already on the wrong path, okay? Harvard is a very bad, in my opinion, degenerate school. It's super expensive, so you're just shooting yourself in the foot financially with the wealth, and in your family, you've just hurt your family because you've just strapped so much debt on your back. And we've already talked about people at Harvard don't necessarily make more money. That's a huge myth that they perpetuate. The reason that they do is not because of Harvard, it's because they recruit the top performers in the country, and people that are trust fund babies that are like Bush, who, it doesn't matter where he went to college, he was going to be successful because that's his family. It's going to be inherited through his family. So, okay, so college is too low. I want to give you kids an education. It's to start now, not to prepare them for college. College is mostly a joke these days. I want to prepare your kids for life. They should never have to go to college to get an education. Like, that's what we're going to give your kids. Okay, leadership. That's one of the great subjects. So I just want to tie that into the pursuit. So much leadership is a trivial pursuit. If you take a leadership college in class, you're probably less able to lead. You take a kid straight off the street, he probably has a better sense of leadership than the kids who take the classes, because they'll talk about management and just organization, all this stuff. If you're thinking like that, you're not going to be a leader. You're not going to be the one charging up the hill. So leadership is super important, but we need to tie it into those things again. Church leadership. We should be looking to lead in our faith, in our church. Every husband is the priest of his home, or the preacher of his home, the spiritual guide for his home. He needs to learn leadership. How do you spiritually develop your kids? Most of us just take our kids and drop them off at youth group, and that's clearly not working. The faith is deteriorating like crazy. You're a mother or father. You are I don't want to say priestess, but you are your kid's spiritual foundation. You need to know how to lead them in faith. You can't pass the buck. Sunday school is not taught by experts. I've run Sunday school programs. I'm telling you, it's so hard to get volunteers. We take anybody. We give them the curriculum. We hope the curriculum does the teaching. But I'm telling you, your Sunday school is not likely. You're rolling the dice to lead your kids to faith. You have to take charge of your kids' faith. Church should be there to worship and to strengthen you, and then you have a preacher or priest or something like that who's developing you as the head of your children, but you are their spiritual advisor. And that doesn't end when they become adults. You as a mother or father are there to guide it's like the Godfather principle, but you are like the Godfather. You're there to lead them spiritually for the rest of their lives. Church is a bonus, but leadership is faith. Leadership and family, I talk about this huge in the third book, how we have no leadership in family, how that's just been eviscerated, the concept of leadership in family, and hierarchy is a bad name. Hierarchy is super powerful. Every organization, business, government that functions well, military, has organization. There's none of that in the family. So we should need to be teaching leadership as it applies to the family. So that's one of the great subjects, and I'm trying to tie these in. Okay, leadership with wealth, talking about, creating wealth takes leadership. You can only do so much on your own to create wealth unless you're going to get a paycheck. But if you want to build powerful wealth, you have to be able to lead other people. You are one person, you can only accomplish so much. If there's a big field out there, I can only plow so much and harvest so much on my own. If I want to build wealth, I have to be able to lead other people. So leadership applies outside of the family, outside of the church. It's going to be different in the corporate world or in the business world. It's going to be different. So, okay, fitness, leadership and fitness. There's a really important concept. We tend to think of leadership as, or I should say authority is a bad thing. And I'm going to challenge this really heavily in the next book. Not the next book, the third book. But talking about how powerful leadership is and submission is. Teaching kids not just to be the leader, but to be submissive, to be a follower is super, super powerful. It's not just about being at the top. If you can follow orders, if you can submit to someone else, you empower yourself. I tie this, I'm talking about this with fitness right now, okay? I have accomplished so much more. When I tried out for the Green Berets, Army Special Forces, it's 2 weeks of hell. You can't even imagine it. I was a wrestler, I was in good shape, I lifted weights, I was like running triathlons, I could do so many pull-ups. I was like a triathlete. When I went to selection, I got annihilated, and it was amazing how much farther. I remember, I think on day 2 or 3 of selection, I was so sore when I woke up, I could barely move. And I remember thinking, dude, this is day 2. I'm not going to make it. And I wouldn't have made it if it was on my own. Because if I was on my own, leading myself, I didn't have it in me. It's no way. I didn't believe. I had reached my top on day 2. The cool thing was there were leaders there. There were leaders on my team. There were the cadre leaders, and they were going to push you and push you and push you. And you realize, man, you can accomplish, I thought I was done at 10%, and I had this much farther to go, and I made it. But it was by submitting to other people's leadership. When they said move, I just moved, I obeyed, and it empowered me. So actually, submission is really powerful. When you go to the gym, a lot of rich people, whatever, they hire a personal trainer, and then they submit to him because they understand that because of their own weakness, they can only push themselves so far. By submitting to the leadership of that other trainer, they can achieve more. Where we all think, like, we have this attitude of, like, I don't take orders from nobody, and that has gone into our family, the sense of individualism, and it actually makes you weak. I know wives are, because been so ingrained in them that it's degrading to be submissive or something to your husband. No, it's actually empowering. It'll make you a better person to have somebody as the head of you. Because of our own weakness, it is, our same with our children. Think of how much more they could accomplish if they learned to submit to our leadership. If every day wasn't a struggle, if they just got on board, we could help them accomplish so much through submission. Think of how many husbands ruin their families because they won't submit to the leadership of the church and of Christ, and how much they make their lives so much harder, so much miserable. Submission is something that we should be teaching. It goes along with leadership. I certainly have no problem with that. I understand the importance of it. I have led and given orders as a sergeant to people that I expected to be obeyed, and then I've submitted to orders. And it's not degrading. It's how high-functioning organizations work, and a family should be a high-functioning organization. That's in the 3rd book. Okay, that's coming. But leadership as a participant. I guess I was talking about fitness in the personal trainer, tying that into leadership. Careers, I've already talked about careers. Faith, family, finances, fitness, big subjects. Career goes under fitness or wealth creation. And your kids' subjects, what they learn is going to change according to the career path that they're kind of aligning themselves with. So the science they learn is going to be different. That's why I hate, that is so true. My daughter is like that, very strong-willed. Okay, and that's great. Strong-willed people are great, but they really need to understand the power of leadership. And they get it when they join a sports team, a coach. They understand they can accomplish more by submitting, but it's so funny how we only do that when it comes to sports because we want to be high performing. We know it's important, so we submit to leadership. But when it comes to everything else, they want to give us trouble. And I think it's because they don't understand the power of submission. They think that it's empowering to be at the head, the front of the pack. It's not. You see the birds flying, okay? The guy at the front of the pack is breaking the wind for everybody else. It's hard to be a front. It's a burden. It's a privilege to be following the leader. So kids need to really understand that. It's a power. They will accomplish more and go farther if they're willing to submit and then understand what leadership is. It's a burden. It means you're up front. You're breaking the path for everybody else. It's a burden. And anyway, that's a different lecture. Okay. I think that's really all I wanted to say. I just want to give you some idea how we transform the trivial pursuit, which is traditional education, into the pursuit of greatness. And that's why so much of education, it can't be standard because we're going in different directions, right? When it comes to gardening, maybe you live in an apartment, you can't garden. Okay, you got to teach science a little bit differently, but you can teach it through food and stuff like that. History is so important. History is so worthless the way they teach it in schools. I remember, the Mongols attacked these people on this day. Who cares? What can I possibly gain from that? Does that affect my faith, my family, my finances, my fitness? No. Now, if I want to be a world leader or a general, yeah, maybe it is different. I need to study the art of that war. But see how we can't just learn facts for no reason. It has to have a purpose behind it. When we teach history, the history I write, it will tie into your kids' faith. It will tie into their family. I love telling the history of like the Israelites and tying it into the family and talking about here's the mistakes that they made. Here's what happens in a broken family. There's some great lessons in the Bible. You want to see disasters? It's the broken family. And if you are in a broken family, you need to understand I'm at a disadvantage. I need to compensate for it this way. And you know, so I don't know where I was going with that, but the point is education has to impact those 4 things that actually matter. Faith, family, finances, and fitness. Those are the 4 subjects of life that will make us the happiest. If you fill your kids full of worthless information, you've done nothing for them. Who cares if they know the names of Christopher Columbus's books, if they don't know how to lead a family or create wealth, and they're going to a job that they hate every day? What can that do for them? That knowledge of Christopher Columbus. So there you have it. Education should be powerful. It should have purpose and direction. It should be useful. It shouldn't just puff you up with how much you know, what your SAT score is. Who cares? What college you go to on the wall? Who cares? When somebody tells me they went to Harvard, I'm like, cool. Like, you know, I hope you went on a full ride scholarship because otherwise you blew a ton of money. I'm not impressed. Show me what you accomplish. That's it. I always ramble at the end because I just free talk. And then when I run out of things to say, I wrap it up. Hopefully you guys are getting something out of this. If you guys have questions, let me know. I'm not going to be live on Friday anymore. I'm really wanting to put a little bit more time, that little extra time, into producing master talks for your kids. I want to know what you guys want your kids to know first, because I can't do all the master talks. I can do history. And when I do history, I don't do the history you guys are all getting that everybody knows. And I do the history that is being misrepresented and is matters and is important, is tied to our faith and family and finances and leadership. I want our kids to be world leaders. This is what this greatness thing is. I'm not raising your kids up to be, and there's nothing wrong with this, I'm not raising them up to be a school teacher, but unless they're going to be the greatest school teacher, or I'm not raising them up to be whatever. I mean, I want them to be at the highest peak level. So we study the greats. When we study history, I'm not necessarily studying the history of the Romans. I'm studying the history of Julius Caesar and the family, the Julii, and how they worked together and networked and how they climbed to the top and his leadership. So that's the focus. We're going to study great leaders. Some of them have done bad things. Some of them are controversial. It doesn't matter. We're going to study how they accomplish what they accomplish, and then we can take those lessons and apply it into our own families, and we can use it for good. So we'll be studying those things with history. I could do art. I am an artist. This is Dino Hunt. Dino Hunt's raging, right now. It's so exciting on Amazon. I'm the illustrator. I'm also an author. I've written tons of books. And if you've read my books, you know the quality. It's not just something we pump out. I mean, I think I could write pretty well. I can teach your kids that, to be powerful writers, communicators. It's not about writing. It's about communicating powerfully. That is one of the superpowers, the ability to communicate powerfully. I'm not going to get into that one. That's another tangent. I was already wrapping it up. But I can teach your kids that. I have a little public speaking snippet on there in Master Talks already. I can go more into history. I can do art. I could do the Bible. I've gone to Bible college. I've studied so much. I have so much I could teach your kids about the Bible that you're not getting. So I could do that. We love it. Little Man loves it. Cool. And I love that last poem. My kids recite it all the time. I love the last poem in Dino Hunt. It's just beautiful. I love creating art. So I can teach your kids those things. But I want to pick a subject and kind of go with it for a while. I'm just trying to decide what to do. I can teach your kids leadership principles. We're actually building a studio on our property. It's not amazing. It's tiny. Sounds cool, a studio. But and I want to start teaching your kids leadership. Leadership is it's not something you learn in a textbook. It's something you apply. It's how you walk. It's how you carry yourself. Leadership is powerful. I'm going to do a course on those. Those are all going to be on Master Talks. I'm just trying to decide what you want first. So if you guys have any ideas, something you want me to cover on Master Talks, I'd be more than happy to do that. But that'll be my focus from now on. I want to get more videos up. That's really where the great education is going to happen. It's going to be in those Master Talks. That's what's going to set your kids apart from the other kids and going to put them on level with the elite prep schools so that they can compete with them, toe-to-toe with the prep schools. All right, guys, I am actually done this time. Thank you guys so much for coming, and we'll keep growing this group. Thank you guys for being a part of it and supporting me. The future's exciting.